The recruitment hall buzzed with nervous energy as 300 beings from across the galaxy shuffled into formation. Zara Chen stood perfectly still among the chaos, her human eyes scanning the diverse crowd of aliens who towered, skittered, and floated around her. She was the only Terran in the batch, and everyone knew it. Drill Instructor Vorthak slammed his forearms against the metal podium, creating a thunderous boom that silenced every creature in the vast chamber. His reptilian face twisted into what might have been a grin, revealing rows of crystalline teeth that could probably cut through starship hull plating. "Welcome to the Galactic Defense Corps, you pathetic excuses for sentient life." Vorthak's voice boomed through the translators embedded in everyone's necks. "Most of you will wash out within the first week. The lucky ones will simply quit. The unlucky ones will require medical reconstruction." A nervous ripple of whispers swept through the crowd. Zara remained motionless, her face a mask of calm determination. "But before we begin your training," Vorthak continued, his yellow eyes gleaming with malicious delight, "we have a special treat for you worms, the Earth simulation." Every alien in the room turned to stare at Zara. She could feel their compound eyes, thermal sensors, and psychic probes focusing on her like targeting systems. Her jaw tightened, but she kept her expression neutral. Vorthak's mandibles clicked together in what passed for laughter among his species. "Ah yes, we have a genuine Terran with us today. How delightful. Tell me, human, what do you know about your homeworld's reputation?" "Sir, I know that Earth is considered a Class 12 death world by galactic standards, sir." Zara's voice carried clearly across the silent hall. "Class 12, Vorthak repeated, his voice dripping with mock amazement. "Did you hear that, recruits? Class 12. Do you know what that means?" A crystalline being near the front raised a tentacle-like appendage. "Sir, it means the planet's environmental conditions are so hostile that they would kill most galactic species within hours, sir." "Correct." Vorthak's grin widened. "Hours if they're lucky. Most would die within minutes. The gravity alone would crush a Altarian into paste. The atmospheric pressure would implode a Zephyrian's breathing sacs. And don't get me started on the predators." Zara bit back a smirk. These aliens had clearly never seen a house cat. "But here's the truly amusing part," Vorthak continued, beginning to pace back and forth on his 6 legs. "The Earth simulation has been part of our training program for 50 standard years. It was designed to test the absolute limits of courage, adaptability, and survival instinct. In 5 decades, exactly 0 recruits have ever successfully completed it." The silence in the hall was deafening. Zara could practically hear the aliens' multiple hearts beating faster. "0! Vorthak shouted suddenly, making several recruits jump. "Not one!" Not even the legendary Kraken warriors of Nemesis Prime, who can survive in the vacuum of space for 3 days. Not the silicon-based Gorothians who eat molten metal for breakfast. Not even the psychic collective of Mindara, who can manipulate reality with their thoughts. He stopped directly in front of Zara, his massive form casting her in shadow. And certainly not the precious little humans. Despite all their ridiculous propaganda about being the most adaptable species in the galaxy. What a joke. Zara's hands clenched into fists at her sides, but her voice remained steady. "Sir, with respect, I'd like to volunteer for the Earth simulation, sir." The hall erupted into chaos. Aliens began chattering, clicking, buzzing, and psychically screaming in dozens of languages. Several of the larger species backed away from Zara as if she'd just announced she was carrying a plague. Vorthak's laughter boomed over the noise. "Volunteer? Oh, this is precious. The human wants to volunteer." He turned to address the crowd. "Quiet, you mewling grubs." The noise died instantly. "Tell me, human," Vorthak said, leaning down until his massive head was level with Zara's. "Do you have any idea what the Earth simulation contains?" "Sir, I assume it's designed to replicate the environmental hazards of my homeworld, sir." "Environmental hazards," Vorthak repeated slowly, savoring each word. "Yes, let's call them that. Tell me, what's the most dangerous predator on your planet?" Zara considered this for a moment. "Sir, that would depend on the criteria used to define dangerous." "Sir, let's say most likely to kill you in a one-on-one encounter." "Sir, probably a saltwater crocodile or a polar bear." "Depending on the environment, sir." Vorthak's eyes lit up. "Excellent. The simulation includes both of those charming creatures, along with your great white sharks, your African Cape buffalo, your black mamba snakes, and your delightful little box jellyfish." Several aliens made distressed noises. One of the gaseous beings began rapidly changing colors, which Zara's cultural briefings had taught her was a sign of extreme anxiety. But wait, Vorthak continued, clearly enjoying himself. There's more. The simulation also includes your planet's most deadly environmental hazards. Hurricanes with winds that can tear apart starships. Tornadoes that can lift and throw objects weighing several tons. Earthquakes that split the ground open like a hungry mouth. And my personal favorite, your adorable little volcanoes that rain molten rock from the sky. Zara nodded thoughtfully. Sir, that sounds like a fairly representative sample of Earth's biosphere. Sir, the silence that followed was so complete that Zara could hear the atmospheric recycling systems humming in the walls. Representative, Vorthak said flatly. Sir, yes, sir. Though I notice you didn't mention the really dangerous stuff. Sir. Every eye, sensor, and detection organ in the room focused on Zara with laser-like intensity. Vorthak's forearms crossed over his massive chest. Really dangerous stuff, he repeated, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Please enlighten us. What could possibly be more dangerous than the creatures and phenomena I just described? Zara's lips quirked upward in the faintest suggestion of a smile. Sir, you didn't mention the wasps, sir. Wasps? Sir, yes, sir. Or the fire ants. Or the spiders. Or the mosquitoes carrying malaria, dengue fever, yellow fever, and Zika virus. You also didn't mention the poison ivy, the stinging nettles, or the countless varieties of toxic mushrooms that look exactly like edible ones. Vorthak's confident expression was beginning to waver. Sir, you also failed to mention the most dangerous predator on Earth, sir. Which is, Sir, other humans, sir. A collective gasp rose from the assembled recruits. Several of the more nervous species began edging toward the exits. But here's the thing, Zara continued, her voice taking on a conversational tone that somehow seemed more threatening than any shout. I grew up in Australia. The translator systems throughout the hall began beeping frantically as they struggled to convey the significance of this statement to species that had never heard of Australia. Sir, Australia is the continent on Earth where evolution decided to make everything as deadly as possible, just to see what would happen. We have spiders whose bite causes flesh to rot off in chunks. We have jellyfish so venomous that touching one will kill you before you can scream. We have snakes so aggressive they'll chase you for miles just because you looked at them wrong. Vorthak was no longer smiling. Sir, we have plants that cause pain so intense it can drive people insane. We have fish that look like rocks until they inject you with enough toxin to kill a small spacecraft crew. We have octopi the size of your thumb that carry enough poison to kill 26 adult humans in 4 minutes. The hall was deadly quiet now. Even the atmospheric system seemed to have stopped humming. Sir, and that's just the wildlife. We also have drop bears, sir. Drop bears? Zara's smile widened slightly. Sir, I probably shouldn't tell you about those. It might affect the simulation's difficulty rating, sir. Vorthak straightened to his full height, all 4 of his arms trembling slightly with what might have been rage or fear. Fine, human, you want to play? Let's play. The Earth simulation begins in 1 hour. You'll go in alone, as is traditional. Sir, thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, Vorthak snarled. The simulation lasts 72 hours. You'll have no equipment except standard recruit clothing. No weapons, no tools, no communication devices. The environmental conditions will shift every 12 hours, cycling through different regions of your homeworld. Sir? Understood, sir. If you survive the first 24 hours, I'll be genuinely surprised. If you survive 48, I'll recommend you for immediate promotion to Special Forces. If you somehow manage to complete all 72 hours, Vorthak paused, his reptilian features twisting into an expression of cruel amusement. If you complete all 72 hours, I'll personally write a letter of recommendation for Officer Candidate School and give you my own service medal. Zara's grin was now unmistakable. Sir, what if I don't just survive? What if I actually enjoy it, sir? The question hung in the air like a live grenade with the pin pulled. Vorthak's yellow eyes narrowed to slits, and his mandibles clicked together rapidly. Enjoy it? He whispered. Sir, Earth is my home. These aren't hazards to me. They're Tuesday afternoon, sir. Several aliens fainted. Others began rapidly backing toward the exits, clearly wanting to be as far away as possible from whatever was about to happen. Vorthak's composure finally cracked. Get out! He roared. All of you. Except the human. Zara Chen, you report to Simulation Bay 7 in exactly 1 hour. Move! The hall emptied in seconds, leaving only Zara and the trembling drill instructor. "Human," Vorthak said quietly, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been respect. "You have exactly 1 hour to change your mind. No one will think less of you for backing out." Zara looked up at the massive alien warrior who had terrorized recruits from across the galaxy for decades. Her brown eyes sparkled with anticipation and something that looked suspiciously like bloodthirsty joy. "Sir, with all due respect, I haven't been home in 2 years. This is the best offer I've had since I enlisted, sir." Vorthak stared at her for a long moment, then shook his massive head slowly. "Terrifying," he muttered. "Absolutely terrifying." As Zara walked toward the exit, she was already planning her strategy. 72 hours in a simulation of Earth's environment. She'd spent longer than that camping in the Outback for fun. This was going to be the best vacation she'd had in years. The massive doors of Simulation Bay 7 hissed open, revealing what looked like a portal to hell itself. Beyond the threshold lay a perfect recreation of the Australian Outback during the dry season, complete with red dirt, scrub brush, and heat shimmer that made the air dance like liquid fire. Zara Chen stepped through the doorway wearing nothing but standard recruit fatigues and boots. Behind her, a dozen of the galaxy's most elite military observers crowded around monitoring stations, their various species equivalent of sweating bullets as they watched her approach certain doom. "Simulation parameters confirmed," announced technical specialist Crix, a spider-like being whose 8 arms danced across holographic control panels. "Temperature 47 degrees Celsius. Humidity 12%. Gravity, standard Earth normal. Atmospheric composition, exactly matched to Terra." Drill instructor Vorthak stood with his 4 arms crossed, his reptilian face a mask of grim determination. In the past hour, word had spread throughout the entire base about the human who had volunteered for the impossible simulation. Half the base personnel had found excuses to be present. 72 hours, Vorthak announced over the comm system. No equipment, no assistance, no mercy. The environmental conditions will cycle every 12 hours through 8 different Earth biomes. "Recruit Chen, this is your final chance to withdraw." Zara stretched casually, her joints popping in the dry air. "Sir, ready when you are, sir. Simulation begin." The moment the words left Vorthak's mouth, the temperature spiked another 5 degrees. The artificial sun blazed overhead with the merciless intensity of the real Australian summer. Within minutes, most galactic species would have collapsed from heat stroke. Zara looked around thoughtfully, then walked over to a cluster of rocks and began systematically turning them over. "What is she doing?" whispered Commander Thane, a crystalline being whose species could survive in the vacuum of space but found Earth's conditions absolutely nightmarish. "Looking for water," Vorthak replied grimly. "Insects and small animals seek shelter under rocks. Where there are animals, there's usually a water source nearby." "She's going to hunt insects." Crix's 8 eyes focused on the monitors in horror. "She's going to hunt everything," Vorthak said quietly. "Watch." Zara found what she was looking for under the 5th rock, a small gecko, perfectly camouflaged against the red stone. She scooped it up gently, examined it for a moment, then released it unharmed. "Why did she let it go?" Commander Thane asked. "Because it's not venomous and it's too small to be worth the energy expenditure," Vorthak explained. "She's conserving her strength and gathering information. She just learned what species of reptile lives in this area, which tells her about the local ecosystem." Zara continued her methodical search, moving in an expanding spiral pattern from her starting point. After 20 minutes, she found what she was really looking for: animal tracks in the soft dirt near a cluster of drought-resistant bushes. She followed the tracks for about a kilometer before finding a small watering hole, little more than a muddy depression with a few inches of brackish water at the bottom. Most galactic species would have recoiled in disgust. Zara knelt down, cupped her hands, and began drinking. "She's drinking that filthy water," gasped Lieutenant Zix, a gaseous being whose species absorbed nutrients directly from solar radiation. "It's not filthy," Vorthak said, his voice carrying a note of reluctant admiration. "It's filtered groundwater. The mud acts as a natural filtration system. She knows exactly what she's doing." After drinking her fill, Zara began collecting materials: dry grass, strips of bark, small branches. She worked with efficient precision, her movements economical and purposeful. "She's building something," observed Dr. Keth, the base's xenobiologist. "Shelter," Vorthak confirmed. The temperature will drop rapidly once the artificial sun sets. Desert conditions mean extreme temperature variations. Zara constructed a lean-to shelter in the shade of a large boulder, using techniques that looked primitive but were actually based on thousands of years of human survival experience. She oriented it to catch the prevailing wind for cooling during the day and to block it during the cold night hours. That's when the first predator arrived. The simulation's version of a dingo materialized from the scrub brush, its yellow eyes fixed on Zara with unmistakable hunger. It was larger than a real dingo, enhanced by the simulation's designers to be even more dangerous. "This is it," breathed Commander Thane. "How does she plan to fight a predator with no weapons?" Zara looked up from her shelter construction and saw the dingo. Her reaction was not what anyone expected. She laughed. "Hello, gorgeous," she said to the predator, her voice carrying clearly over the monitoring systems. "You're a big one, aren't you?" The dingo snarled and began circling her, looking for an opening to attack. Zara stood slowly, her movements deliberate and non-threatening. She didn't run, didn't scream, didn't even reach for an improvised weapon. Instead, she began talking to the animal in a calm, conversational tone. "Easy there, mate. I'm not here to hurt you. This is your territory, I get it. But here's the thing, I'm not prey." The dingo paused, confused by her lack of fear response. "See? The thing about humans," Zara continued, taking one small step forward, "is that we didn't climb to the top of the food chain by being bigger or stronger or faster than everything else. We got there by being smarter, and by being absolutely, completely, utterly ruthless when we need to be." Another step forward. The dingo's ears flattened against its head. "You want to know the secret to human survival?" Zara asked, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "We don't just adapt to the environment. We make the environment adapt to us." She suddenly clapped her hands together with a sharp crack that echoed across the desert. The dingo jumped backward, startled. "Boo!" The predator turned and fled into the brush. The monitoring station fell silent except for the humming of electronic equipment. "She scared it away," Lieutenant Zix said in disbelief. "No," Vorthak corrected, his voice thoughtful. "She established dominance. She convinced it that she was the apex predator in this encounter. That's not survival instinct. That's psychological warfare. Against a wild animal? Humans wage psychological warfare against everything," Vorthak said quietly, "including their own planet." The next 11 hours passed in a blur of efficient survival activity. Zara caught and ate insects, collected more water, improved her shelter, and even managed to start a fire using friction between two dry sticks. By the time the environmental conditions shifted, she had transformed her small section of hostile desert into a temporary home. The second phase transported her to a dense jungle environment, complete with humidity so thick it was like breathing soup and the constant buzz of insects that would have driven most species to madness within hours. Zara stripped off her shirt, tied it around her waist, and began exploring. "The humidity will kill her," Dr. Keth observed. "Her species isn't designed for this level of moisture saturation." "Watch her breathing," Vorthak said. "She's controlling her respiratory rate to minimize water loss while maximizing oxygen intake. And look at how she's moving." Zara was indeed moving differently. Instead of fighting through the dense vegetation, she was flowing around it, finding the paths of least resistance, using the jungle's own structure to guide her progress. She found a stream within an hour and immediately began following it upstream, looking for cleaner water and higher ground. Along the way, she collected edible plants, identified medicinal herbs, and avoided 3 separate venomous snakes without even seeming to notice them. "How does she know which plants are safe to eat?" Commander Thane asked. "Human survival knowledge is cumulative," Vorthak explained. "Every human carries genetic memories and cultural knowledge passed down through thousands of generations of survivors. They don't just know how to survive. They know how their ancestors survived." The jungle phase included an encounter with a simulated jaguar, which Zara avoided by climbing a tree and waiting patiently for it to lose interest. She then spent the remaining hours in that phase building an elevated sleeping platform and waterproofing it with large leaves. Phase 3. Arctic tundra. The temperature plummeted to -30 degrees Celsius. The wind howled like a living thing, and snow began falling so heavily that visibility dropped to mere meters. Most observers expected this to be where Zara's survival streak ended. How could anyone survive in such conditions without proper equipment? Zara looked around at the blowing snow and howling wind and grinned. Now this, she said to herself, feels like home. She immediately began digging. Not randomly, but with clear purpose, excavating a snow cave in a drift that had formed against a rocky outcropping. The cave was positioned to block the wind while allowing for ventilation, constructed with techniques that were pure Inuit. Survival wisdom filtered through modern understanding of physics and thermodynamics. Snow is actually an excellent insulator, she explained to the monitoring equipment, apparently having decided to provide educational commentary for her audience. The key is to make the sleeping area higher than the entrance, so cold air flows out and warm air stays trapped inside. She used her body heat to melt and refreeze sections of the cave walls, creating smooth, hard surfaces that would reflect heat back to her. She gathered pine needles to create insulation and arranged stones to create a heat-reflecting surface. She's turning a frozen wasteland into a cozy bedroom. Lieutenant Zix observed with something approaching awe. She's not just surviving, Vorthak said slowly. She's thriving. Look at her vital signs. The medical monitors showed that Zara's heart rate was actually lower than it had been during the desert phase. Her core body temperature was stable, her breathing was deep and relaxed, and her brain activity showed patterns associated with contentment. She's enjoying this, Dr. Keth said in disbelief. Of course she is, Vorthak replied. This is what humans do. They take the most hostile environments in the galaxy and turn them into homes. The remaining phases continued the pattern. Ocean survival. Zara built a raft and caught fish with improvised tools. Mountain survival. She found shelter in a cave and used reflected sunlight to start fires. Swamp survival. She built a raised platform and turned the environment's dangers into advantages. By the final phase, a volcanic landscape with toxic gases and flowing lava, something had changed in the monitoring station. The observers were no longer watching a desperate struggle for survival. They were watching a masterclass in environmental adaptation. Zara navigated the volcanic terrain like she was taking a scenic hike. She used volcanic vents to cook food, volcanic glass to make cutting tools, and even managed to purify water using geothermal heating. With 6 hours remaining in the simulation, she sat on a rocky outcropping overlooking a lava flow, eating roasted insects and humming what sounded like a campfire song. Final assessment, Vorthak said quietly into his recorder. Subject has not merely survived the Earth simulation. Subject has demonstrated complete mastery over 8 different hostile environments. At no point did subject show signs of distress, panic, or desperation. He paused, watching as Zara began weaving grass into rope with casual expertise. Recommendation: immediate promotion to Special Forces with assignment to hostile environment operations. Further recommendation: subject should be consulted in the design of advanced survival training programs for all Galactic Defense Corps personnel. Sir. Technical Specialist Crix's voice cracked slightly. There's something else. What? Subject's biometric readings indicate that her stress hormones are actually lower now than they were when she entered the simulation. Her dopamine and endorphin levels suggest she's experiencing what humans call enjoyment. Vorthak stared at the monitors showing Zara Chen, who was now apparently building some kind of shelter out of volcanic rock, and slowly shook his massive head. Terrifying, he muttered. Absolutely terrifying. When the simulation ended and the doors opened, Zara walked out looking refreshed and relaxed, like she'd just returned from a spa vacation rather than 3 days in hell. Sir, she said, snapping to attention with a slight smile. Simulation complete, sir. Vorthak looked down at the small human who had just redefined everything he thought he knew about survival. Courage and adaptation. Recruit Chen, he said formally. On behalf of the Galactic Defense Corps, I hereby promote you to the rank of Specialist and recommend you for immediate assignment to Special Forces Hostile Environment Operations. Sir? Thank you, sir. I also owe you this, Vorthak said, removing his personal service medal and pinning it to Zara's uniform. You've earned it. Zara's smile widened. Sir, does this mean I can volunteer for the next simulation, sir? The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Technical Specialist Crix fainting and hitting the floor with a metallic clatter. Vorthak looked at Zara for a long moment, then slowly began to laugh. It started as a low rumble in his chest and built to a booming sound that echoed throughout the simulation bay. Human, he said finally. I think we're going to need bigger simulations. As word spread throughout the galaxy about the human who had not just passed the impossible Earth simulation, but had actually enjoyed it. Recruitment applications from Earth increased by 3,000%. The galaxy, it seemed, was finally beginning to understand what human really meant. And they were absolutely terrified, which, Zara thought with satisfaction, was probably exactly the reaction her species had been hoping for all along.